Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Sunday 11 a.m. Civil Service Q&A session. We're going to have a bit of a chat about what it is we do at Empire for PD. We encourage you all to ask any questions you've got in the chat of this stream so that we can get those picked up and answer them as soon as possible. We're going to open up with a quick introduction of who we are, and then we've got some sort of starter questions for 10. So I'm just going to pick on people. Amy, do you want to introduce yourself?
Hi, my name is Amy Woodhead. I play Speaker of the Senate, who is responsible for umpiring the Senate sessions during Empire events. Anything related to Senate, the bills, Senate motions, mostly Senator wrangling, usually comes through me or my colleague, Harry Harold.
Great, thanks. Eleanor?
My name's Eleanor. I am the civil servant for the Bourse. So that's all of the public auctions, the seat auctions of White Granite, Weirwood, Ilium, and Mithril, and all the voting for those. And then I spend a lot of time in the hub, just answering general queries as well as that.
Great, thanks. Sam?
Hi, I'm Sam. I play Katja Gramani, the Herald of the Military Council, which means that I chair all of the Military Council meetings and I'm kind of the main go-between between the members of the Military Council and Over the Hedge.
Great. I'm Jonathan. I play Leo, one of the various civil servants staffing the Tribune of the Synod. So we're all there to help priests get their judgments through and sort out all the political side of the Synod. Great. Now I know who we are. Let's probably start with a bit of a typical day. What it is we do at Empire to get a feel for what our day jobs look like. So I'll go in again a slightly different order. Eleanor, do you want to start?
In my day as a civil servant starts at 9 o'clock. With we have a meeting over with the plot team where we can check in. So there's all of the egregores and all of the civil servants get together to share what's been going on the previous day, anything that we should be aware of, and what's going on either with plot that's going out or general current. A lot of it is just around current affairs, keeping ourselves abreast of what's going on in the Empire that we should be aware of, because either we might be asked about it or it might be an opportunity for us to make sure that players know about it, and gives us an opportunity to feed back into the plot team how things that are going on are being picked up. Are we hearing them talked about in the field? So that's how my day starts, cramming in some breakfast and a cup of tea generally during the meeting, and then trying to get out into the hub at or shortly after 10. I'm often a little bit later because I have to pick up things that are stored securely in God overnight. Then throughout the day, I would spend in the evening. Saturday there's a seat auction in the afternoon, and auctions in the afternoon and evening, and between those times I might be taking items for the public auction, taking votes for the seats, and generally answering anybody's queries. Generally I will be in the hub until sort of fairly late evening. I often go to conclave as well. Initially that was, partly that's because my kid plays in the conclave game, but also I sometimes will help out with the conclave silver service as well. So long days for me.
Yeah, no, I guess I'll go next. I'm very used to long days. So that morning meeting we have about 9 o'clock with all the sort of civil servants, egregores and plot team. I normally go to that, but then duck out very, very early after doing my bit, because we've got to get back to the hub and get all of the judgments back on the wall. So normally even by Saturday morning, we'll have 50, 60 judgments that need to get put up on the wall for everyone to read. We take them down securely overnight because unfortunately at one point they went missing and there was a big problem. We put them all up back in first thing in the morning, and we time in with everybody at 10 o'clock because we open for voting and new judgments at 10 o'clock. So for us with the Tribune, from, if we take a Saturday's example, from 10 till 2, 3 till 6, and from 7 till 10, we are live in the hub, taking votes and taking new judgments. And it's only in between those times that we do the little bits of admin to add stuff up, announce the results, and then have a bit of a break to grab lunch and things, then we're back in the hub for the next scrutiny period, as we call it. Sort of outside of that, we do a little bit now and again of popping back behind the hedge occasionally to ferry sort of questions back to the game team in character to talk about asking the Constitutional Court, which I think is something that probably all of our departments do at different points, is sort of feeding back to the central game team whenever there's key questions or there's something that's not clear, or even just to report on significant things happening. So yeah, that's sort of my typical day. Standing behind a desk is most of my day, to be honest, similar to Eleanor there, although for me it's all in the hub, whereas Eleanor gets to move around a little bit more. Sam?
I generally don't get to the 9 a.m. meeting because I'm not good at early mornings. So my first part of the day is usually heading to the Varushkan Hearth because I'm also a summer mage. And for the Varushkan Battle Muster, going and doing some enchantments and things on Varushkan warriors before they go out onto the field. I will then head to the hub to see if I've missed anything important at the meeting. And see if anyone needs any help in the hub. Shortly before my actual first military council meeting, I will go over to the game team to find out the result of the battle. And anything I'm going to need to tell the field marshal about how the battle went. I then have the big meeting where the generals find out how they did in the battle and have lots of arguments about everything they possibly can because they're generals. After the meeting, I take any information and questions that I need to back over to the game team. So if there were specific questions that I couldn't answer, I'll go and ask and be able to relay the answers back to them at the next meeting. I then, although there's only one official meeting per day, I also chair the unofficial generals meeting on a Saturday evening because they just behave better if there's someone looking after them. I checked with all the players before I started doing that and said, would you like an unofficial teacher there to make sure that everyone's playing nice? And everyone was in agreement that it was helpful. So even when I just show up with my supper to sit there and watch, I get asked to chair it. But it's not a formal chairing, so I might be eating and having a drink while I'm chairing it because I'm not actually there in my official capacity as a civil servant. But it's nice to kind of still be overlooking everything and making sure everyone's doing what they should be. And then I spend a lot of the rest of the time just in the hub helping out, answering questions from citizens with queries and helping any other departments that might need a little bit of help. That's about my day. It's a bit quieter than every other department. But it's made up for by the fact that the meetings take forever and are quite heated.
Not sure anyone would want to volunteer to do military council, so sterling work there. Amy, last but not least.
Right. My day starts again at the same meeting that hopefully I've made and I haven't slept in.
I feel like I'm being judged.
No, I'm massively envious of you. I try to make that meeting. I will time in at 10 a.m. when time in starts. I'm usually in the hub straight through up until 2 hours before any Senate session, because any Senate motions need to be vetted and looked over by the Constitutional Court, which is OC, the games team of the 4 games designers, and then it's back in feeding back any questions or concerns about Senate motion wordings to those senators, provided I can find them. A Senate session, and then it's rinse and repeat. We go through the same thing again for the next Senate session. It's basically a 10 a.m. to about 11 p.m. job. I'm usually getting out of Senate about that time, going back to the hub to see whether there's anything that needs doing, and then hopefully, fingers crossed, I can clock off and enjoy the evening. But it's a very long day, and it's a very late one as well, so we're full on.
but your work is immensely valued, Amy. Never forget that. We've had a question from the chat here. So from Fallon Raw, what parts of our civil service role do we most enjoy? I don't know if anyone wants to pick up that one first.
I could go first.
Yeah,
Go
go
on
for it, Amy.
I think what I've enjoyed the most about being a speaker is the opportunity to see a part of a game that I, as a player, had no interest in whatsoever. I was aware that the Senate game was happening, but I'm not a confident public speaker. I wasn't interested in that. I never thought I would be interested in it. Until I stepped into that NPC role and got to see it a lot more impartially. That's given me, I think, a much broader understanding of how interesting that game could be. And for many people, it might not be their jam, but it's still very good jam.
Sam, I think you had
Well, again, getting to see the workings of the military council and see how everything works and what everyone does. But also for me personally, I'm the kind of player that isn't very good at jumping on plot. So this character was originally a player character from Event 1 Year 1 until I was asked to join the Civil Service. And I'm the kind of player that will spend a lot of time just role playing rather than doing plot things. But there's a lot of time on a whole weekend. So I can kind of get a little bit bored. Whereas with having to run meetings and do things, it gives me plot where otherwise I might not have had plot. It's kind of vicarious plot. I'm living the plot through the players and having things to do at all times by being. So it suits me really well being civil service.
I think that's a really interesting point. Eleanor.
I'm really lucky. I've been involved with the creation of Empire since before it launched. So I joined the crew team in 2012. So I've had quite a lot of involvement in helping to create it as a fully fleshed out world. So one of the things I really enjoy being a civil servant is that because me personally, I know a lot of those things, or I've got an awareness of aspects of the world that we've created, things which players will tend to know about their own nation, but maybe not about other things that might be connected elsewhere. So being able to have a conversation with a citizen, and they'll be talking to me about something that's going on currently, and being able to use my role to introduce them to something else in the Empire world that they might not have known that might be useful to them. So, well, that sounds a little bit like X. Perhaps you should talk to somebody in such and such a nation about this. So that's an aspect that I find very rewarding.
Great. I think from my perspective, so my background is really from the plot team, both as an NPC and as a plot writer. And I think for me, a couple of things that really I've got out of the civil service role is being able to see plots I know about and how they actually happen on the field, contrasting to what we hear about over the hedge, but also being able to see what is kind of blithely called player-driven plot. That's plot that's purely organically sprung from player action, has nothing to do with particular plans on the other side of the hedge. This is just stuff that people are doing in the field and seeing it all come out. And the Synod sees a lot of that because you've got inquisitions, you've got various political aspirations, all of that bubbling through the judgment pool. So I think that's a really interesting aspect that I've really enjoyed seeing a different perspective on the game. Great. Another question from the chat. Hars the Guard asks, what are some common misconceptions you come across from players and or characters?
But we're not real people.
It's that.
We play characters. We are not just McGubbins that keep things running. All of us play actual characters.
Yes, we're not refs in costume.
No, we're not refs. We're not refs. We are people who have. Our characters are people who have motivations and desires and angles and opinions, which we may not be able to be allowed to state while we're in our official capacities as civil servants, but get Katya around the hearth fire with a drink in her hand, and she will share her opinions with you. The opinion she isn't allowed to have while she's being the herald of the military council, but can have when she's just being Katya.
Mm-hmm. I absolutely agree. It's very frequent that people come up and, I mean, there's so much going on the field. There's only so much time. So you're going to get the players who come up and, I just need this answer. And it's fascinating to see the characters who will come up and be like, no, hi, character name here. How is it going? How's your day been? And like, we've each had our own little bits of flavor that we've brought in, or things that our characters got up to in downtime. And when the players interact with us in that same way, it makes it so much more vibrant a world. And it's the bit I think that I like the most about the job is when people, they don't just treat us as the task, they treat us as a person, or a flesh and blood being who's got a lot of opinions that we cannot say.
One of my fondest recollections and anecdotes is from it was the first event that we'd moved out of the tiny little cubby hole on the side of the Senate, and had a sort of a hub space. And myself and Harry, who plays John of Mead, and John, who plays Magistrate Karkovich, were sitting around in the hub chatting. I think we were having about 25 minutes into a long, drawn-out conversation of how some current affairs thing might be considered from various different constitutional angles, and we're having a great time. This is about 10:30 at night, and some player citizens walked in and just looked at us in utter shock, like they expected that we sort of switched off when they walked out of the room. Yeah,
Like
definitely not.
Like the fridge light that goes off when it's closed.
Yeah,
The hub is always turned on.
I remember I think it was at E4 last year, we had Matt Pennington come down in his role as Magistrate Abraham, to have a bit of to kind of a look around the hub for a while, and he stayed into the evening. It was on the Saturday. Was it on the Friday? So whichever evening Broken Wheel was. So I'd for that Broken Wheel as my freeborn character gone as a fake highborn, a very fake highborn, deliberately spouting satirical
Racism.
highborn propaganda. Yeah, sort of playing the highborn brief the wrong way, deliberately, and ended up this long sort of conversation with him involved, where I was basically going on and on about how High God are always correct, obviously, because you could just rewrite history so that you're correct all the time. And him sort of very kind of patiently trying to, in his role as that character, kind of both answer my question, but also just kind of ignore me enough that I would go away as that interaction played out. And that was great fun. And that I think just highlight everyone says we are characters. We will do things in line with what our nations do. We will do things in line with what our characters believe. We're not going to interfere with the process of state. That doesn't mean that we won't act as anyone else in the world would. And it's I don't know.
Our characters all have motivations for being civil servants. They have chosen to be civil servants in one way or another. So we, as players, for want of a better description, we are enjoying playing characters who are civil servants. So yeah, that's part of it for us.
Yes, absolutely. A few different questions here. One which I think I've got an interesting answer to. So Talisman's asked, are there any repeated questions you wish the players didn't keep asking? And my answer to that is not really. I'd rather people asked us questions if they didn't know the answers than didn't get answers to their questions.
Question I get asked a lot: did we win? I don't like giving the answer if the answer is no, you lost horribly.
Yeah, it can't be a good thing to.
I get to be the bearer of bad tidings if we lost a battle. I'm the one that has to tell the generals that they just got their bottoms handed to them, which is never fun.
I think the question I dislike the most is when someone walks up and says, "Can I ask you a really dumb question or a really stupid question?" And to which my answer is, there's no such thing. The only stupid question is the one that you thought about and chose not to ask. So yeah, I think the things which we get asked a lot, we try and take that on board as, okay, this is something that people require more clarity on, and we all try and feed that back and act on it as Empire evolves and improves. So is there something that we could say more clearly, for example, on the wiki or on the paperwork that is there that people can go and look at in the hub that maybe answers these, not like a frequently asked questions, because that would feel crude and out of character, but repetition of questions is something that can sometimes be quite useful.
Yeah, I agree, and I think it's kind of worth highlighting that we're kind of part of the wider player support team. Our role is there to support players. We are in many ways for a lot of people the front line, customer facing people that will interface with the player base, and it is part of our job, literally part of our job, to answer questions. I have got a follow-on question here, which is, what's the strangest IC question you've ever been asked, or the most entertaining one you've ever been asked? Which I have to think about that one, but if anyone else got something off the top of their mind?
Not immediately, no.
I'm having a really hard time. It's a bit the long dark. Like, it's been so long since, but
The very, very long dark.
I can't think of anything that jumps out as being very strange.
I think one of the strangest ones for me is probably being asked about something which this player was convinced was a thing, that was a plot, an active thing that they could do. And we spent, I think it was about half an hour sort of digging up bits of the wiki trying to find what it was. We couldn't find any reference to what they were talking about. And we eventually sort of concluded that either they'd got confused with something else, or someone had given them kind of like spiel about what this plot that didn't exist. But it was kind of a weird thing of the funny things that were related to what they were talking about, but nothing on the wiki or in any documentation we could find that specifically talked about it. And I'm not sure if it happens to other people, but I know that was a very strange experience for me, because I at that point was fairly up on the different sort of things going on from just having moved over from plot. So
can I put this distressingly bad and hilarious piece of artwork into the public auction? It's also the item which has been most at risk of taking the public auction over the hour that we have in whatever its space it is before we get kicked out for the next meeting. It was, yeah, and the fact that somebody was so sort of, I'm really not sure if I can do this. Is it okay to put this in? To which the answer in general for anything that people want to put in the auction is it a real item? Is it a physical item or a promise to create a physical item? And is it not illegal? Provided those things are met, then absolutely it can go in the auction, and whatever fun and merriment that causes, bring it on.
So a couple of questions here, which are sort of broadly in the same theme. So I think this will probably go for everyone. But what advice would you have for new players in your area? And I think probably the one to start with there might be with Amy for new senators, because I imagine that happens quite often.
For new senators, but even just new players, try and get involved. Find out what your senators are doing. There is a vast synod part of the game that is about right of witness. That is the part of their religion is taking pride in your actions. Or being vigilant. So find out what your senators are doing, why they are supporting particular motions, not supporting other ones, and talk to people. Why not, ask your senator why they thought this action was particularly virtuous, say. And then if you disagree, why not talk to your national assemblies or speak to other priests? Be like, why is this nation constantly supporting this kind of Senate motion rather than others? If you can find a particular interest or angle that you think might be interesting to poke it. If you would like to get interested in maybe one day being a senator, speak to the senators, ask if they need help, offer to be a proxy for them, because it's it's a limited game. There are only so many territories that you can have so many senators from. So that competition is going to be, on the fiercer side for resources and positions. But that doesn't mean to say that you're never gonna get into it. One senator cannot do everything. They're gonna have their own game, their own interest to pursue that takes them away from Senate. So they might be very willing to take you on board, to show you the ropes, to get you involved. That would be like some of the strongest advice I could say to new players. They've been people who have got on the field in their first event and they've found a senator, they've talked to them, and by the end of the event, hey, they were announcing a motion in Senate or being a witness. So there's ways to get involved, but it's sharing the game out. Find what's interesting.
Cool. I think it's a really good answer. Thanks, Amy. Sam, Eleanor, either of you got a particular advice for, I guess?
Covers a lot of my answer as well. Or
Okay.
if you're interested in the military campaign game, then find a general in your nation or in another nation and kind of apprentice yourself to them. Learn from them rather than just trying to go in cold. Come to some military council meetings, make sure that it is something that actually interests you, because it's very much a political role rather than a field commander role, being a general. So make sure that that does actually interest you. Some people, I'm sure, become generals because they think, oh, fighting, and then they get to the meetings and go, actually, this is kind of dull. And it isn't what they thought they signed up for. So make sure that it is what you want and attach yourself to a general and be their dog's body, and learn that way until you get some respect in your nation, so that you might then get elected as a general yourself. If you do manage to get yourself to be a general, then speak up. If in meetings, if you have something to say it. Don't be scared of saying it. Don't let one or two voices do all the talking. Your voice is also valid. A big part of what I do is making sure that everybody gets heard, not just the loud talkative ones.
Yes, and I think that was something that was in your bio that you put up for this, is that you do a lot of work, I think, as I understand it, in making military councils as accessible as possible to all
trying to. Yeah, it's one of the reasons that I run the unofficial meetings in the evening as well. Again, to make sure that the people that otherwise might get talked over get to say their piece.
Cool. Eleanor, new people want to
I
get on
think for my area it's a little bit different, because the bourse is a bit of a nexus, to kind of touch point for the wider trade game, and that's something that really anybody who wants to be involved can get involved with. So in terms of interaction with me and the other agents of the bourse, putting things into the auction if you want to sell something, or coming to the public auctions if you need to buy something. But even if you come along and either you don't want to buy anything, or you don't think you've got enough money to buy the things at the public auction, it's a really good way to get to recognise the faces of the other people who are strongly involved in the trade game. So you might think, oh, well, you can start filing this information away, like, oh, well, if I'm interested in Welt silver, I notice this person tends to buy it at the public auction, so maybe that's something they trade. Most of the in-character trade houses will be represented there, and I can tell you they are all very approachable and friendly people, and they're quite happy to have conversations, whether that's a chat after the auction, or often they'll be off to do something. But more often than not, if you want to talk to them, they'll be like, oh yeah, I've got to go here, we can walk and talk. They're very approachable, and it's a good way to make connections. The other side of that, and probably something I do get asked quite often in the hub by new players or new characters, is how to get involved in the bourse resource game with the high value. So those seats are appointed once a year, and they are they go for sort of 300 to 500 thrones per seat, and that is for control of this resource for the year, which will be between 22 and 28 wains of this valuable resource 4 times a year. So that's a lot of value that's going through there. But all of the groups which have control of those resources have built that up, some of it through time, but some of it through less time than you might think. And it's by pooling their resources, by having connections. Many of them, although they might superficially seem to be controlled only by one small group or within one nation, their connections and alliances are across much wider in the field. I'm not going to give away anybody's secrets of who they're working with, but it's not as simple as it looks like on the surface. So it is really worth kind of getting to know the people, and it is a very sociable aspect of the game. But yeah, turn up and get to know people is definitely a tip from me. Oh, and learn to be able to recognise the money in the dark. All of it is identifiable by touch in the dark. It's a pro tip.
Thank you for the pro tip. And the really good advice for new players there. From a Synod perspective, I think new players in this Synod are often a bit sort of overwhelmed by the fact that they've got only one judgment and you've got all these different assemblies, all these different options for that judgment. What do you do with it? And I think that is a problem that a lot of new players in the Synod face. And from my perspective, I would say that the key thing is to find a cause. I think most of the Synod is having a cause. It could be a new thing you want to do, or an existing cause you want to support or detract, or something like that. And I think a really big part of the Synod is finding something to care about and then go and care about it in some fashion. Be that putting a statement of principle saying, I think that Urizen should start eating more cheese, or whatever the thing is you care about. Or maybe you want to go, you want to stop a particular campaign that's existing, and the way to attack them is to inquisit someone involved with it, or to even revoke them. Maybe it's about vetoing a Senate motion that's about to happen soon, and getting prepared, get the support in place that as soon as that Senate motion lands, you can put the veto in. There's all sorts of options there. The key thing is finding the one thing you want to start with. And I think very similar to everyone else, find other people in the Synod and talk to them, because they can tell you about causes, they can tell you about what you can do, but they can also sort of steer you towards where possibly the most fun might be had, rather than maybe sort of starting a campaign for something that might not be as fun for you as some other things. We've got a couple of really good questions come in, and I think I will pick up this one from Pel Piercy, who asks, as someone who is facilitating game, how hard is the balancing act between these are the rules of Senate, Military Council, Synod, whatever, versus overseeing a good scene, i.e. juicy role play in those arenas? I think
A lot of that in Military Council.
I can imagine. Do you want to start with that, Sam?
Well, it's kind of I'm constantly making judgment calls on this person has been talking for a long time and there are other people that want to speak, but this person is really going for it, and this is what they do, and they're saying interesting things, and I kind of do want to let them finish what they're saying, even if it means that there are 6 other people waiting. Other times, if someone's saying something that's been said already, I might cut them off quite soon and let the next person talk. But if they're saying something really interesting and really passionate and emotive and really, really role playing it, I might let them go on for a little bit longer than I would otherwise.
In the Senate game, the speakers have full control over what order the Senate motions are put in. Now, we follow quite a lot of, our internal rules, because at the end of the day, some of these motions are competing for very limited resources, such as Senate funds or civilian commissions that enable you to build things within the Empire. Because they are limited, they always will appear on the Senate agenda in the order in which a player gives them to me. But for many other things, I get to set the agenda. I get to say, we're doing this first, we're doing this, we're doing that. And taking after Harry Harold, who plays John of Mead and is the other speaker, has a brilliant sense of presence and command of a room. He has always set, really interesting Senate motions at the end of a Senate session. So things like treaties, when it's down to the wire, is this going to be approved or not before the end of the summit? We like putting them at the end of a session because it's a really nice sense of, down to the wire bit of drama. It's like the last closing statement that your lawyers are going to make before the jury deliberates and then releases it, and that's the end of the show. So it's really good fun when you get interesting motions like that, or that have very large ramifications, say like the election of an empress. They'll tend to go at the end, so that we know how much time remains for the Senate session and can just open the floor to everyone. But they need to be brief.
Very interesting, and I like that sort of maximization of the drama at the end of each session. I think that's an epitome of a part of the work you do there. Eleanor, I guess you might be in a similar position to me, where I'm not sure there's a lot we can do to really balance that, because we're more rules based than I think some of the other ones, because we don't chair meetings. Is that fair, or do you have a different perspective?
Well, in the public auction, we very much do curate the auction. So the speaker, more so than me, I'm the one taking all the notes and counting all the money and keeping track of 5 things at once. But in terms of how we run those meetings, there's a couple of good examples, I think, where in both cases we've chosen how we did it to who is it giving game to the most people. So say in a public auction, somebody comes in and they really need to buy a particular resource associated with some wider piece of sort of what they perceive to be public good. It's a topical thing they're trying to do. Generally, lots of people will know about it. If they come to us and say, before we start the auction, can I make an impassioned plea to the other people in the auction to let me buy up all the lots of this item so that I can do this thing, then the answer is, yeah, of course, cool. They're under absolutely no obligation to let you buy it up, but you can certainly ask them. And in the seat auctions, whereas in the public auctions, we try and keep it moving quite quickly, because we've got a lot of things to get through, a lot of items to get through. So people will will bid, win, come and pay me straight away, but things will keep going on. In the seat auctions, each seat bidding happens, then they have to come and pay, and the standing there paying is almost a bit of a spectacle, because nothing continues until that one has been paid for, which means that groups can't bid on more seats than they actually have money in pocket in the room at the time to buy, so they can't abuse that. But it also means that if they happen to be down to counting out the rings to try and buy this, that's seen by everybody in the room. So that it is all about promoting the drama.
Cool. I think that there's less we can do in the synod world. Mostly curating wise, it's what order do we announce judgments in, and we tend to announce the higher priority ones first, because there's a big drama in I'm waiting for this to come in, because it's time sensitive, things like vetoes and revocations. But we also, at the very end of a summit, we go through all the mandates, and a lot of those mandates are competing, and I try to structure it in such a way such you learn the individual results, but the overall result of that opportunity, if there's competing mandates, you only find out at the very end. So I guess that is in some way maximising drama. And the other thing that just very neutral, I will say that we've had it confirmed that it is possible in certain situations for the cardinals to decide to have primacy of their assembly, which means they've got a greater majority of it, and potentially veto something on the Senate floor if needs be. Not happened yet, but it's an option available to them, and it's something that we've said that we'll support if that's something that they're looking to do. So worth bearing in mind if there happen to be any cardinals in the audience, which I think is at least one. Right, we've got a few questions that were kind of built up, so might sort of quick fire a few of them. So we've had one from Erwin Sakarafu, who asks, I should actually ask a question. Apart from treating you as characters, not information dispensers, what can players do to make playing a civil servant more fun for you?
And I've got an answer for that. Come tell us what you're doing. What's happening on the field? We get to see a very limited. We get to see, I guess, not the important things, but like the factual things. This is what has passed. This is what's been bought in the bourse. This is what the military council have agreed to do. But we don't get to see so many of the smaller wins that, my brother came back from the battle and he didn't die. Yay! Come tell us what's happening on the field, because we'd love to hear you enthuse about the things that your characters are excited about or vexed about, or what this other nation's done and it's causing a scandal. We love to gossip.
And just treating us like people.
Mhm.
Asking us questions and telling us things that aren't directly related to our jobs.
Yeah,
Yeah,
where
it's a
where can you get
particular
the?
person who yeah.
Go ahead.
So it's a particular person who has had various different board seats. So I have seen them on over many events, and if they've been to the battle, they tend to just sort of pop through the hub and say, "You're stuck with me for another season," and that's it. Then they're off on their way. But this person has chosen to interact in a kind of, "You're stuck with me. I've survived." And that's yeah, it's become a sort of an in-joke. But yeah, it's a person-to-person reaction interaction between our characters.
Yeah, and definitely come tell us your recommendations. Where are the best tea houses? Where can you get a good cheese board? Who's doing fresh bread? Who's selling what?
Invite us to your camp once we knock off duty in the evening. Invite us back to yours for some entertainments to see another nation rather than us just being stuck in our own nations.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, absolutely. And one of the problems I have is I don't have a lot of free time to try out lots of different things on the Anvil field. So getting those recommendations in is so helpful, because then I've got a target and I can maximise the use of my time. Cool. Pick up another question from Harls the Guard. Might be an obvious answer, but can I ask, do you put judgments up on the boards at certain times, or is it as and when someone gives you a judgment? So I can answer that. There are specific windows available, so we publish those in the hub. You can always come and ask us, but basically, but Saturday's the example. It's between 10 and 2, between 3 and 6, and between 7 and 10. It's when we're open for business in the synod, and during those entire times you can put something up on the board. You come to us, you submit it, we get it put up on the board and all the admin done, and then it's everyone in the field can see it if they want to. It stays up there, and it will stay up there, in fact, till the end of the event. Even if the voting closes earlier, we announce the result, but it goes up as the result on the board so that anyone can go and have a look through. It's one of the things I really love about the synod, is that everyone's putting something of themselves out there on the board, and at any point, by the end of the event, it's highly likely that at least 100 people, if not 200 people, have seen what you've put up there at bare minimum. Interesting question here, and I feel like the user might want to remain anonymous. We'll see. But can I kill civil servants?
Yes, but it's a crime.
It's a crime.
It's been done.
Yeah, a magistrate got murdered. Also, it should probably be noted that if one of the civil servants that is responsible for one of the houses of government, like the military council or the speaker of the house, if one of us did get murdered, the players would find that their replacement looked a lot like them, but possibly a different nation and lineage. Because just because you killed the character, we would still be doing that job. So if someone decided they didn't like me running the military council and offed Katya, they would find that suddenly a Brass Coast Naga who looked a little strangely like me would be running the military council. So they'd still have to deal with me.
Yes. And I think it's worth.
It's not just death either. We came quite close to having an inquisition. Well, an inquisition was raised against a civil servant, me, and if I had been removed from my post, that would also have had consequences. Quite what those consequences would be dependent on the circumstances, but it might not just be as simple as everything carries on as normal because that character is no longer in the picture. Depending on what is best for the wider game, the consequences of something like that happening would be determined. But broadly speaking, everything which is possible to do to a citizen is possible to do to a civil servant. We're not magic.
It's worth pointing out that, especially when it comes to murder, that's kind of like the ultimate sanction almost in the field. Like if you've got if when you're having your player versus player interactions, kind of if you're going to kill them, that should be your last step. There should be ideally a whole campaign before that, because it's not a simple thing to do in Empire. It's quite a dangerous thing to do, and really for that character, that's the end. Certainly for playing the game. So I struggle to think of circumstances in which there would be enough of an impetus for a player character to want to kill a civil servant. It shouldn't be a thing that's for fun in any case, because in no point should murder be for fun in the game. I think maybe some situations where we have a long-standing rivalry for some reason, but really we're there to support. And so I struggle to see how that would happen. But I agree with you, Anna. We're targetable by anything as much as everyone else is.
We've been hit with curses. That's happened. We are still affected by hallowings and anointments. There's better ways to promote roleplay that would still mess with us. That's not just killing a character.
I think we all had a lot of fun with the Icy Maw devours the spark of essence that was in play at the start of E4. I think those of us who were magicians, which would be so most of the civil service, had a lot of fun with the role play on that one, because we were all affected by it, by being angry about our magic being hampered. So that was fun. We've had a couple more questions. Sorry, I've glanced away. One from Nestep. Do you ever make decisions that are in character but differ from your real world views? I don't.
In character, I'm very pro-military expansion. Out of character, I'm a pacifist and don't think we should be invading barbarian lands and conquering them to call them our own.
Yeah, I think it's kind of weird because there's a lot of this is a fantasy game. Like we're stepping away from the real world to play in a different world, and we're exploring the profound decisions that we can make without the sense of real life consequences.
Nice name drop.
But there's not a lot of the real world views that are going around right now are not pleasant. There's going to be some people who can easily play with the I see racism, say against Briars, or say, the Highborn versus the Urizen difference in how you record history. But those are enough. We don't need to, and we should not be bringing in a lot of real life views. Yeah, it's a really tough one.
I think fundamentally our in-character views are based on the world that they inhabit. And I think that's one of the challenges of playing any kind of full-time NPC, is that you really have to be well immersed in the world that you inhabit in order to both be fulfilling a function and be really embedded in that world, because we are almost walking, talking set dressing to some extent. We have to uphold the world of Empire in the way that we present ourselves.
Yeah, we're embodiments of the world, and I think that's a key part of what we do. We show ourselves off there. Another question then from I'm going to call it Rarity Star. I think that's the username. In the Bourse, how do you find national seats are approached differently to the Bourse bought seats, so the auctioned off seats?
I think that really varies a lot from one nation to another. In some nations, there is a lot of competition. So that for anyone who doesn't know, the national seats are voted by resource holders in that nation. So to take the marches, for example, not surprisingly, they're voted by farmers. In the league, they're voted by business owners. So the same conventions of voting as for other things in the nation. But in some, there'll be an awful lot of competition and political manoeuvring of gaining support. And it will be, when the votes come in, it'll be a real challenge for me to tot up the votes between 3, sometimes 4 candidates who are all done a lot of work to get support and to work out who is going to take it, and people will just be sent to vote for that one, and in others it might just have been unanimous. So it really varies from one nation to another. I'm not sure I could say that it's national seats are approached universally in the same way. They are different to bought seats, and certainly I've seen them be a gateway to raising the wealth to then start being able to take control of bought seats as well. Often they're used differently, the resources from...
I think we've lost you there, Eleanor. Sorry.
Sorry. Can you hear me now?
Yes, sorry, I think it's slight technical difficulties. Go ahead, Eleanor.
Yeah. So there seems to be a difference in how the resources from them are used. So I know charity is not really a thing in the Empire, but more charitably, more for public good. It's more easy to appeal to somebody who's a national seat holder to put those resources to good use as opposed to profitable use, although good luck to you trying to convince against the other 25 people who are trying to persuade them of the same thing. Yeah, so they're different in that there isn't an imperative to make the money back, although equally in the bought seats, not every group that has control of bought seats sees them in that way. Sometimes some of them really are buying the privilege to have control over the resources, and making the money back on those resources in order to do it again next year isn't their primary aim. In fact, I probably wouldn't say it's not the primary aim for any of them.
Okay. Interesting. I think we've got a really nice question here, certainly for me, from Cheese Whiz 2000. If you could swap which great house you worked in, what would you want to do?
Ooh.
Mm.
Well, I was originally recruited to be a Speaker of the Senate House.
Oh, okay. Know that.
When I was originally asked to join the Civil Service, it was because the current second Speaker, along next to John of Mead, was quitting, and I was asked to fill their place and join John of Mead in the Senate. But I helped run a meeting in the Military Council, and it just kind of worked, and I ended up staying there. But part of me would still always like to have had a go at the Senate and see what it's like.
Please come help.
I've come and stood in the gallery a couple of times and watched.
I would love to. I'd love to help out the conclave. Not the conclave. The synod. Because personally, I love the religion game. I never have time to read all of the judgments and mandates and whatnot that have popped up. And looking at Jonathan's face there, I don't think I'd have much time to do so in that role. But I'd love to step into that and see more about what the players care about and what they're actively doing to shape the world.
I think it's interesting because I think I do. Personally, I get to see almost all the judgments because we read them through as they come in, just to sense check them. Because one of the things we use check they comply with the E&D rules, the equality and diversity rules, and the conduct rules. So I get at least a brief scan over most of the judgments because I tend to be one taking them at the moment. So I think if you did spend some time in Synod, I'm not trying to steal you away from Senate because I know you do sterling work there, but I think you would get a real good chance to.
I have been a Synod tribune for one event, so, but it was a different character.
Maybe one event we should all swap positions. It would go perfectly. There would be no issues with this. I'll run Senate. Elodie can run the Synod. Who wants Military Council?
Dib's not it. No. I say
We'll
that.
give it to John of Mead.
Yeah, he'd be fine with that.
I think
Given I've seen everybody's Bourse face, I think that I'm going to be stuck with it. I mean,
you said I wouldn't mind doing Bourse because back in the very early days of Empire Year One, I played and I was a part of a family still exists that does an auction, and I helped out a little bit with the auction. Now I was doing the admin side, which sounds like what you tend to do in the auctions, Eleanor, rather than the speaky side. But I found I quite enjoyed that. I don't think I'm as good as you, but I think I've got enough of the right head for numbers that I can kind of do all the maths and do all 5%, whatever the commission is. So I think that's probably, of all of them, the one I most want to do. Although I have an interest in Senate as well, because I think it's probably, I feel like it's the highest drama of all the houses. I'll have to be wrong there, but I think it's probably the most politically charged, because it's such that focus on the main goals of the Empire.
Military Council gets quite politically charged as well.
Okay.
Conclave as well.
Fair enough.
I think Conclave is the one that I would probably help out with. I mean, I have helped out on and off with it, and I tend to attend it quite often when I can. But as the contrast with the sort of the voted and bought politics in my area, and obviously working next to the synod all the time, seeing that voted come and vote, and it being a fairly private and personal voting. I love the difference between that and the conclave, where the decisions are very present, and it literally is sort of put your hand up right now. You cannot vote in secret. It's a very different style of democracy, although it's still very, very democratic. And I find that contrast is the thing that would interest me probably.
Very cool. Something very interesting that's not our own roles, which I think I really like about Empire. Right. Well, I think that's a fair few questions. We've been going for about an hour. I think purely selfishly, I've had a lot that I've gained from this, because I think I've learned a lot more about my colleagues, and I hope all of you watching have learned quite a bit as well. I must say I'm very sad that we can't all be with you in a field right now. But hoping that in the not too distant future our fortunes will change, the situation will be a lot better, and we can all interact in character. But thank you very much for tuning in. Hope you've had a good time. I believe all this, as well as all the other AMAs that we've done this weekend, will be available on Twitch to sort of watch on demand. So if you missed any of the other ones, there was a plot one and there was a battle one. Do catch those, because you get to learn about lots of different aspects of the game. But thank you very much for watching, everybody, and we'll see you in a field sometime. Bye.
Bye.